Chosen one, why did you wake up at 3 a.m. last night with your heart pounding and no explanation? Why have you been checking your phone every 5 minutes today, waiting for something you can't even name? Why does July 7th, 2025 feel like it's been hunting you down like a divine appointment you never made? Listen to me, chosen one. You didn't stumble onto this message. You were summoned here. Because somewhere between heaven's boardroom and hell's panic room, there's been a cosmic disruption over your name. And July 7th, this wasn't supposed to reach you. The enemy tried to cancel this date. He tried to bury it under distractions, emergencies, and chaos. He whispered lies that you were forgotten, that your breakthrough was just wishful thinking, that God had moved on to someone more qualified. But here's the shocking truth that's about to shatter every lie you've believed about your timeline. This day was not on your calendar, but it was on heaven's. You see, there's a divine telegram that's been circling the spiritual realm with your name burned into it. It's been delayed, rerouted, attacked, and intercepted, but it cannot be denied. And today, July 7th, 2025, it's finally breaking through every barrier that tried to keep it from you. That restlessness you feel? That's not anxiety, that's recognition. Your spirit knows something your mind hasn't caught up to yet. Heaven has been trying to reach you, and today, the signal is stronger than it's ever been. You've been feeling strange today, haven't you? Like you're on the edge of something massive, like the atmosphere around you has shifted, like God is about to speak and the whole universe is holding its breath. You're not losing your mind. You're finding your moment. The enemy thought if he could keep you busy, distracted, doubting, that you'd miss this divine download. But chosen one, what was meant to happen to you today cannot be stopped by hell's interference. This is the day that breakthrough stops being a prayer request and becomes your new reality. This is the day that waiting stops being your occupation and becomes your graduation. This is July 7th, 2025, the date that was circled in heaven's calendar before you were even born. Something moved. Something whispered, something sacred called your name. And that's why July 7th couldn't stay hidden any longer. If you've been feeling strange today, if your spirit has been stirring, if you've been checking your phone, if you woke up knowing something was different, type "I heard it anyway" in the comments and keep watching. You're not crazy, you're on schedule. The divine telegram just arrived. Are you ready to open it? Why have you been calling it a test when God has been calling it a trigger? Why have you been praying for the pain to stop when heaven has been using it to start something unstoppable inside you? Why have you been asking God to take you out of the fire when He's been using it to make you combustible? Listen to me, chosen one. Every sleepless night you thought was punishment was actually preparation. Every betrayal that left you gasping for air wasn't meant to suffocate your spirit, it was meant to inflate your authority. Every season where your name never came up, your effort went unnoticed, your tears hit the pillow and nobody knew, wasn't God testing your endurance. It was God triggering your emergence. You've been looking at your life through the wrong lens. You thought you were in the exam room, but you've been in the ignition chamber this whole time. A test checks if you're ready. A trigger pulls you into readiness. And heaven hasn't been checking on you. Heaven has been launching you. Think about that moment when everything fell apart, when the relationship ended without explanation, when the job disappeared overnight, when the diagnosis came back and shattered your plans, when the family turned their backs and left you standing alone. You called it your breaking point, didn't you? You whispered through tears, "God, why are you testing me like this?" But what if I told you that wasn't your breaking point? What if that was your launch point? What if your trauma wasn't meant to stop you, but to introduce the version of you that doesn't flinch anymore? See, the enemy wants you to believe you're being punished. He wants you to think God is disappointed in you, that you're failing some cosmic exam, that all this pain means you're not worthy of breakthrough. But that's the lie that keeps chosen ones trapped in survival mode, when they should be stepping into authority mode. The truth is this: You weren't broken down. You were booted up. Romans 8:28 doesn't say all things work together for good when you pass the test. It says all things work together for good for those who are called according to his purpose. You weren't being tested on whether you deserved to be called. You were being triggered into remembering that you already are. That season in the dark wasn't a prison. It was a photo lab. God was developing you in the shadows because what you carry is too glorious to expose prematurely. Every tear was a chemical reaction. Every heartbreak was part of the process. Every moment you thought he had abandoned you, he was actually in the dark room with you, watching your true image emerge. David wasn't being tested when he ran from Saul for years, hiding in caves, wondering if God's promise was a lie. He was being triggered. Every night of fear was developing his faith. Every moment of isolation was amplifying his intimacy with heaven. When he finally stepped into the palace, he didn't walk in as someone who had passed a test. He walked in as someone who had been ignited by trials and now carried the fire of unshakable trust. You thought it was a test because it hurt, but heaven wasn't testing your heart. It was igniting your authority. That betrayal that made you question everyone's motives, that wasn't God testing your ability to forgive. That was God triggering your discernment so you'd never again waste your energy on wolves in sheep's clothing. That financial crisis that had you eating ramen for months, that wasn't God testing your faith in his provision. That was God triggering your understanding that your security doesn't come from a bank account. It comes from his promises. The trigger wasn't to expose how weak you were. It was to release what's been buried under survival mode. You didn't fail when you cried yourself to sleep. You activated compassion. You didn't collapse when the doors kept slamming shut. You developed persistence. You didn't break when they counted you out. You became unbreakable. And if you're wondering why it felt like everything was shaking, it's because heaven was slamming the go button on your destiny. Job 23:10 says, "When he has tested me, I will come forth as gold." But look closer at that word tested. In Hebrew, it's bakan, which doesn't just mean to examine. It means to melt down and refine, to trigger a transformation process that removes impurities and reveals the precious metal that was always there. You weren't being graded, you were being refined. You weren't under review, you were under release. The dark room you thought was punishment was actually preparation. The silence you thought was rejection was actually protection. The delay you thought was denial was actually divine timing perfecting itself in your life. Here's what the enemy doesn't want you to realize. You don't survive fire like that without catching some of it. You're flammable with favor now. You carry the heat of heaven's approval. When you walk into rooms, atmospheres shift. When you speak, things move. When you pray, hell gets nervous. That's not arrogance, that's activation. You flinched and still walked forward. You bled and still obeyed. You broke and still believed. And every time you chose faith over fear, trust over trauma, hope over hurt, you were being triggered into a higher frequency of spiritual authority. The pressure wasn't meant to crush you, it was the necessary weight to ignite the flame that's been waiting inside you since before you were born. You're not in testing anymore, chosen one. You're in activation, and the world is about to feel your heat. If this truth is hitting your soul right now, if you're finally seeing your pain through heaven's eyes, type in the comments, "My trigger wasn't trauma, it was timing. God didn't hurt me, he lit me." Because what's about to unfold next will prove that everything you've endured wasn't random. It was orchestrated to birth the authority that's about to emerge through you. You know what breaks my heart? It's the chosen ones who think God walked away. You've been there, haven't you? On your knees at 2 a.m., pouring your soul out to what felt like empty air, begging for just one sign, one whisper, one tiny confirmation that you weren't talking to yourself. The silence was so thick you could cut it with a knife, so heavy it pressed against your chest until you wondered if you were breathing prayers or just gasping for hope. You thought he couldn't hear you. You thought he'd moved on to someone more worthy, someone less broken, someone who didn't question so much. But chosen one, what if I told you that every single moment you felt abandoned was actually the moment you were being watched the closest? What if the silence wasn't punishment, but precision? What if God wasn't ignoring your cries, but measuring your endurance? What if every unanswered prayer wasn't falling on deaf ears, but being archived in heaven's vault for this exact moment? Listen to me carefully. Heaven's silence was never absence, it was surveillance. Think about Job, 42 chapters of agony. His friends told him to curse God and die. His wife questioned his faith. Boils covered his body. His children were gone. His wealth vanished. And for 37 chapters, God said absolutely nothing. Not a whisper, not a hint, just devastating, crushing silence. But Job 38:1 changes everything. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind. When God finally spoke, he didn't just answer Job's questions. He rewarded his endurance. He doubled everything Job had lost. The silence wasn't cruelty. It was preparation for a comeback that would echo through eternity. You've been in your job season, haven't you? Crying yourself to sleep, wondering why the God who parted seas and raised the dead couldn't seem to hear your desperate pleas for help. Why couldn't he fix your marriage? Why couldn't he heal your body? Why couldn't he open doors that seemed welded shut? Here's what they don't tell you in church. The silence was never about you not being worthy of an answer. The silence was about you being strong enough to carry the weight of what was coming. God doesn't test weak people with strong trials. He doesn't give lightweight assignments to heavyweight champions. The depth of your silence was proportional to the magnitude of your breakthrough. Every night you cried yourself to sleep, heaven was taking notes. Every morning you got up anyway, angels were cheering. Every time you chose faith over fear when the evidence was screaming the opposite, your name was being moved higher on heaven's priority list. Psalm 56:8 says, "You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. You have recorded each one in your book." Did you catch that? Collected, recorded. Every single tear you thought went unnoticed was being archived for a divine purpose. The enemy wanted you to believe that silence meant rejection. He whispered lies that your prayers were bouncing off the ceiling. He convinced you that other people were getting their miracles while you were getting ignored. But chosen one, what if your silence was actually the sound of heaven holding its breath, waiting for the perfect moment to release everything it had been storing up for you? Think about this. Why did the most painful seasons feel the most quiet? Because God knew that breakthrough without preparation would destroy you, that blessing without character would corrupt you, that elevation without endurance would embarrass you. The silence was sacred strategy. Every unanswered prayer was actually being answered with, "Not yet, but watch this." Every closed door was being locked until you were ready for what was behind it. Every delay was divine protection from timing that would have been too early or too small for what God really had planned. You thought it was abandonment, but it was alignment. You thought he wasn't listening, but he was measuring. Every single moment of silence was God calculating exactly how much you could handle, exactly when you'd be ready, exactly what would give him the most glory through your story. Here's what's about to blow your mind. The vault is opening today. July 7th, 2025 isn't just another date on the calendar. It's the day that archived prayers start getting answered. It's the day that stored up tears start turning into testimonies. It's the day that silent seasons start speaking volumes. Every prayer you thought went unanswered, They were all building toward this moment. Every night you wondered if God had forgotten you, He was actually preparing you for something so big that silence was the only way to protect it until you were ready. If you've cried in silence, if you've wondered if God could hear you, if you've questioned whether your prayers were making it past the ceiling, I need you to type "I was heard" in the quiet in the comments right now. Because, chosen one, your silence is about to become the loudest testimony of God's faithfulness anyone has ever heard. The sound of silence was never emptiness, it was anticipation, and what heaven has been anticipating is about to be released over your life in ways that will leave you speechless for entirely different reasons. But there's something else you need to know about what happens when God breaks His silence. Dear chosen one, I need you to stop right now and ask yourself this brutal question. What if every door that slammed shut in your face wasn't rejection, but protection? What if every no you received wasn't God abandoning you, but God shielding you from something that would have destroyed you? Because here's the shocking truth that nobody wants to tell you about delay. You are not behind schedule. You are being brought out at the exact moment that will silence every single person who counted you out. Let me paint you a picture that's going to shatter everything you thought you knew about God's timing. When Joseph was 17 years old, God gave him a dream that he would rule over his brothers. 17. But then what happened? He was thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, falsely accused and forgotten, in prison for 13 years. 13 years of delay. 13 years of wondering if he heard God wrong. But here's what Joseph didn't know while he was rotting in that cell. Pharaoh's butler wasn't ready to remember him yet. Egypt wasn't ready for the famine. His brothers weren't broken enough to receive mercy. And Joseph wasn't mature enough to handle the power without becoming corrupt. The delay wasn't punishment, it was preparation, it was divine insulation. You see, chosen one, when God delays your blessing, He's often delaying the backlash that comes with it. Every dream delayed is a character flaw avoided. Every door closed is a trap escaped. Every not yet is a not that destruction. Think about it. How many times have you looked back and thanked God that certain relationships didn't work out? How many jobs that rejected you later went under? How many investments you couldn't make that would have bankrupted you? You thought you were missing out. God knew you were being protected. But here's where it gets personal, and this is going to hit you right in the chest. You've been feeling left behind, haven't you? While others got promoted, you stayed in the same position. While others got married, you stayed single. While others built their empires, you stayed hidden. And the enemy has been whispering in your ear, God forgot about you. You missed your season. It's too late now. That's a lie from the pit of hell. David was anointed king at 16, but he didn't touch the throne until he was 30. 14 years of waiting. 14 years of dodging spears from Saul. 14 years of living in caves like a fugitive. But if David had become king at 16, he would have been murdered within a month. He needed every single battle, every betrayal, every lonely night in those caves to build the wisdom and humility required to handle a kingdom. And so the delay was developing him, not denying him. And right now, as you're listening to these words on July 7th, 2025, I need you to understand something that's going to change how you see your entire story. What if the closed doors were mercy, disguised as missed moments? What if every setback was actually a setup for something so massive that you needed years of strengthening just to carry it? Because here's what delay really is in God's hands. It's divine insulation. It's heaven saying, not yet, because I love you too much to give you something that will break you. It's God protecting your destiny from your immaturity, your blessing from your brokenness, your calling from your character flaws. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness before God called him to deliver Israel. 40 years. But if God had called him at 25, Moses would have tried to deliver Israel through his own strength and gotten everyone killed. The 40-year delay humbled his pride, deepened his dependence on God, and gave him the patience to deal with 2 million complaining Israelites. Every year of delay was a year of becoming who he needed to be. So let me ask you this question that's going to set your soul on fire. What if you're not behind? What if you're exactly on time? What if God has been using every delay to insulate you from destruction and position you for something so powerful that timing is everything? If you've felt left behind, if you've wondered why everyone else seems to be moving while you're standing still, type "I was preserved, not postponed" in the comments right now. Because what's coming next is going to show you exactly why July 7th, 2025 couldn't come a day sooner. That moment when your heart broke, did you notice the instruction hidden inside the ache? Listen carefully, chosen one. While you were drowning in tears, while you were questioning everything you believed, while you felt like God had turned his back on you, that's exactly when he was whispering your next assignment. You missed it because you were listening for thunder when he was speaking in whispers. The battlefield is not where you get lost. It's where your voice gets coded. Every single chosen one in this room has received instructions during their darkest hour. Not before the storm, not after the storm, in the storm. Because that's when your flesh is too weak to argue with heaven's strategy. That's when your pride is too broken to edit God's commands. That's when your desperation creates the perfect frequency for divine download. Think about it. When did Moses get the burning bush? After 40 years of exile in the wilderness. When did David receive his anointing, while his own family forgot to invite him to the ceremony? When did Joseph understand his calling? In the bottom of a pit, betrayed by his own blood. The pain wasn't punishment. The pain was preparation for the whisper. But here's what's breaking my heart today. So many of you heard those instructions. You felt them burning in your chest during those 3 a.m. crying sessions. You sensed them in that hospital room. You caught them between the lines of that divorce paper. You received them in that moment when everything fell apart, and you've been carrying them like secrets ever since. What did you hear in the pain that you're now afraid to obey? Was it the instruction to walk away from that relationship that was killing your spirit? Was it the command to start that ministry when you had no money? Was it the nudge to forgive someone who destroyed your life? Was it the call to step into leadership when you felt unqualified? You heard it. Don't tell me you didn't hear it. Your spirit recognized the voice of its creator, even when your mind was screaming with confusion. But somewhere between the battlefield and the blessing, you started second-guessing what God whispered to you in your lowest moment. You started asking for confirmation of what was already confirmed in your pain. You started demanding new signs when the original instruction was crystal clear. Listen to me. The enemy's greatest strategy isn't to keep you from hearing God. It's to make you doubt what you already heard. He knows that if you obey that whisper from the pit, you'll rise with an authority that can't be shaken. He knows that instructions received in brokenness carry an anointing that instructions received in comfort never will. He knows that when you follow divine commands given in darkness, you emerge with a light that blinds hell itself. Jeremiah 1:5 says, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart." God didn't wait until you had your life together to speak your assignment. He spoke it before you even existed, and He's been confirming it in every breaking season since. Your pain was never random. Your breakdown was not coincidence. That moment when you thought you were dying, that's when you were actually being born again into your purpose. Job heard his instruction in the ashes. "Though he slay me, yet will I trust in him." Gideon received his marching orders while hiding in a winepress. Go in the strength you have. Paul got his Damascus Road download while he was blind and broken. What makes you think your instructions would come any differently? The whisper you received in your trauma was not trauma talking. That was heaven talking through trauma. That nudge you felt in your loss was not grief speaking. That was God redirecting your grief into purpose. And you've been sitting on those instructions like they were suggestions instead of commands. Here's what happens when you delay obedience to battlefield instructions. The enemy gets more time to convince you it wasn't real. Doubt gets more room to grow. Fear gets more opportunities to paralyze you. And that divine moment when heaven bent down to whisper in your ear gets buried under layers of logic and limitations. But today, July 7th, 2025, those whispers are surfacing again. They're demanding to be remembered. They're refusing to stay buried under your excuses. You feel it, don't you? That familiar stirring. That same instruction trying to break through again. Not because God is repeating himself, but because you haven't obeyed what he said the first time. Romans 11:29 declares, God's gifts and his call are irrevocable. What he whispered to you in that hospital bed is still valid. What he downloaded into your spirit during that divorce is still active. What he commanded you to do when you lost everything is still your assignment. The instruction hasn't expired, your obedience has just been delayed. What did you hear in the pain that you're now afraid to obey? Was it to start that business? Move to that city? Leave that job? Reconcile with that person? Write that book? Record that song? Preach that message? Adopt that child? Take that risk? You know exactly what I'm talking about. Your spirit just confirmed it. That instruction that made no sense to your natural mind, but made perfect sense to your supernatural calling. You don't need a new sign. You need to obey what you already heard. Right? I remember the whisper if you've been carrying quiet instructions. Because today is the day those whispers stop being memories and start becoming movements. The battlefield whisper you've been ignoring is about to become the breakthrough the world has been waiting for. Chosen one, I need you to sit with this truth for a moment. The version of you that survived everything up until now. The one who learned to duck when life threw punches, who whispered when you should have roared, who apologized for taking up space. That version of you is about to die today. And I know that sounds harsh, but listen carefully. This isn't a tragedy. This is liberation. You see, there's something the enemy never told you about survival mode. It was never meant to be permanent. It was a costume you put on to get through the storm, not an identity you were supposed to marry. But somewhere along the way, you got so comfortable playing small that you forgot you were born to be sovereign. What if I told you that your next level is literally rejecting the version of you that kept playing small? What if heaven has been waiting for you to outgrow the person who begs for permission before speaking their truth? What if the breakthrough you've been praying for can't happen until you stop showing up as the victim of your story and start walking as the victor? Here's what's happening in the spirit realm right now. There are assignments with your name on them. Divine appointments, supernatural connections, generational wealth, healing that breaks bloodline curses, but they're being held in a vault marked access denied because the person trying to claim them isn't walking in their true authority. Let me paint you a picture. You wouldn't wear a torn, mud-stained survival outfit to your own coronation, would you? Yet that's exactly what you've been trying to do spiritually. The mindset that helped you endure the wilderness is the same mindset that will disqualify you from the palace. Scripture tells us in Corinthians 5:17, if anyone is in Christ, the new creation has come. The old has gone, the new is here. But here's what the church didn't teach you. Sometimes God has to force the death of your old identity because you're too afraid to let it go yourself. You've been carrying survival trauma like a security blanket. You've been wearing poverty consciousness like protective armor. You've been speaking from fear because it felt safer than stepping into faith. But chosen one, what got you here won't get you there. I'm talking to the person who still says, I'm just, before describing what you do. I'm speaking to the soul who apologizes before sharing their opinion. I'm addressing the chosen one who's been playing dead in their own life because someone taught you that humility meant making yourself small. That version of you dies today, not because you're being punished, but because you're being promoted. Listen to what Jesus said in John 12:24. Unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it remains only a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds. Your old self has to die for your destiny to be birthed. This isn't optional. This is divine law. Here's the brutal truth that's going to set you free. The people who knew you in your survival season aren't equipped to celebrate you in your sovereignty season. The rooms that tolerated you when you are broken won't recognize you when you're whole. The relationships built on your trauma won't survive your transformation. And that's not your problem to fix. That's confirmation that you're moving correctly. You've been so afraid of losing people that you've been willing to lose yourself. You've been so terrified of being too much that you've been content with being not enough. But God is calling you to a level where your presence alone shifts atmospheres, where your voice carries weight, where your yes means something and your no is final. The survival version of you needed permission. The sovereign version of you gives it. The survival version begged for scraps. The sovereign version sets the table. The survival version asked, "Can I?" The sovereign version declares, "I will." This is the funeral of your survival self and the coronation of your sovereign soul. Right now, as you're listening to these words, something is dying inside you. That hypervigilance that kept you scanning every room for danger. That people-pleasing spirit that exhausted you, trying to keep everyone comfortable. That scarcity mindset that made you grateful for crumbs. It's all being stripped away because where you're going, you won't need those old coping mechanisms. You've outgrown the version of you that begged for permission. Now you walk as the answer. The assignments waiting for you require someone who knows their worth. The relationships being prepared for you need someone who's healed from their past. The influence being handed to you demands someone who's not afraid of their own power. But here's what's going to challenge you. The moment you start walking in this new authority, everyone who benefited from your brokenness is going to try to call you back to your old self. They're going to say you've changed, that you're different, that you're not the same person. And you're going to smile and say, "Thank God, that was the whole point." If this is resonating with every fiber of your being, if you can feel something dying and something being born simultaneously, say, "I am shedding to enter" in the comments right now, because what's coming next is going to require every ounce of the new you, and not a single piece of who you used to be. So the question is, are you ready to bury your survival self so your sovereign self can rise? Because July 7th isn't just marking a new day. It's marking the death of everything that kept you playing small and the birth of everything God created you to be. You've been chasing favor like it's some lottery ticket from heaven, haven't you? Running after opportunities, networking your way into rooms, hustling for recognition, begging God to notice you among the millions crying out for breakthrough. But what if I told you that everything you've been taught about, favor, is backwards? What if favor isn't something you find? It's something you unlock. Listen closely, chosen one. The moment you stopped believing you had to earn God's attention was the moment you became dangerous to every lie the enemy ever whispered about your worth. You became a threat to the systems that profit from your desperation. You became unstoppable the second you realized you were already enough. To begin, here's the truth that's about to revolutionize everything. Favor isn't falling from above, it's rising from within. Think about David in 1 Samuel 16. When Samuel came looking for Israel's next king, nobody even called David in from the fields. His own father forgot about him. But here's what shakes me to my core. David wasn't waiting for favor to find him, he was already walking in it. While his brothers polished their armor and practiced their speeches, David was out there, protecting sheep, worshiping God in the wilderness, developing the heart of a king when nobody was watching. The favor was already unlocked, it just needed the right moment to be revealed. You see, when the prophet arrived, David didn't have to campaign for the crown. The oil flowed down his face because the preparation had already been flowing through his veins. That's not luck, beloved. That's alignment. That's what happens when obedience becomes your love language with heaven. But here's where most people miss it. They think favor is about getting picked. No, no, no. Favor is about being prepared. It's about saying yes to God in the small moments, so when the big moment arrives, you're not scrambling to catch up. You're already in position. What if favor isn't found in opportunity, but in obedience? Romans 8:28 doesn't say all things work together for good for those who get lucky. It says all things work together for good for those who love God and are called according to His purpose. Called, not chosen randomly, called because they've been responding to His voice in the details, in the dailiness, in the decisions nobody sees. You want to know why your breakthrough feels delayed? Because you've been looking for favor in all the wrong places. You've been checking your email for divine opportunities when favor has been knocking on the door of your obedience. You've been scrolling through job boards when favor has been sitting in your willingness to serve where you are. You've been networking with people when favor has been waiting for you to get alone with God. Favor isn't a thing. Favor is a frequency. And when you tune into God's frequency through surrender, through trust, through radical obedience, even when it doesn't make sense, that's when favor stops being something you chase and becomes something that chases you. Esther didn't stumble into the palace. She was positioned there for such a time as this. But notice, she had to risk everything to activate what was already hers. She had to say yes to what scared her most. The favor was locked until her obedience turned the key. Moses didn't get lucky at the burning bush. He'd been walking in the wilderness for 40 years, developing the humility that would qualify him to lead a nation. The favor was being unlocked through every season of hiddenness, every moment of faithful obscurity. And you've been unlocking favor every time you chose faith over fear, every time you worshiped in the waiting, every time you blessed someone who couldn't bless you back. You just didn't realize it was an investment account in heaven's economy. Here's what happens when you understand this. You stop begging and start believing. You stop chasing and start choosing. You stop performing and start positioning. Because you realize that favor isn't about God changing His mind about you. Favor is about you aligning your mind with His. The enemy has convinced you that you're behind, that others got picked and you got passed over. But what if you're not behind? What if you're right on time for an unlocking that nobody else could handle? What if your delayed seasons weren't delays at all, but deposits into a favor account that's about to compound? Proverbs 3:4 says, "Let love and faithfulness never leave you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. Then you will win favor and a good name in the sight of God and man." Did you catch that? Then you will win favor after the faithfulness, after the love, after the consistency that nobody applauds. You don't wait for favor. Favor waits for you to say yes. Every time you choose obedience over comfort, you're turning a key. Every time you choose integrity over image, you're turning a key. Every time you choose God's way over the easy way, you're unlocking levels of favor that can't be earned, only accessed through alignment. Say, "I carry the key," if you know this is your unlocking season. Because chosen one, you're not waiting for your ship to come in. You are the ship, and the wind of heaven's favor is about to fill your sails. But here's what you need to understand about this unlocking season. It's not just about what you receive. It's about what you release. Chosen one, let me tell you something that's going to shake you to your core. That burden you've been carrying, that weight pressing down on your shoulders for months, maybe years, you've been calling it pressure. You've been calling it stress. You've been calling it too much. But what if I told you that weight isn't your enemy? What if I told you it's your inheritance? Your great-grandmother didn't pray through those depression nights so you could live small. Your grandfather didn't work 16-hour days in that factory so you could settle for ordinary. And your parents didn't sacrifice their dreams so you could waste yours. No, chosen one, that weight on your shoulders isn't pressure, it's permission. Permission to break every ceiling they couldn't reach. Permission to speak every word they were silenced from saying. Permission to walk through every door they could only dream about. But here's what the enemy doesn't want you to understand. He's been whispering lies, telling you that weight is too heavy, that you're not strong enough, that you should just put it down and live like everybody else. But chosen one, if you put down that mantle, you're not just quitting on yourself. You're breaking a covenant that spans generations. Moses felt this same weight when God called him to lead 2 million people out of Egypt. He said, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh?" But God didn't call Moses because he felt ready. God called him because the prayers of 400 years of slavery were sitting on his shoulders. Exodus 3:10. So now, go, I am sending you to Pharaoh, to bring my people out of Egypt. Moses wasn't just carrying his own destiny, he was carrying the answered prayers of his ancestors. And so are you. That restlessness you feel, that's not anxiety, that's ancestry. That's 4, 5, 6 generations of your bloodline who never got their shot, who never saw their breakthrough, who died with their song still inside them. And now their dreams are knocking on the door of your destiny, asking you one question: will you finish what we started? Your name is the bridge between what your ancestors prayed for and what your descendants will walk into. Think about this. Right now, there's a child who hasn't been born yet, who's going to need the path you're about to create. There's someone in your family line 20 years from now who's going to say, "Thank God for what they did in 2025. Thank God they didn't give up. Thank God they carried the weight." Esther understood this. When Mordecai told her she had to risk her life to save her people, she could have said, "I didn't ask for this. This is too much." But Esther 4:14 tells us, Mordecai said, "And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this?" She wasn't in the palace for herself. She was there for generations of her people who would live or die based on her decision. What if your yes today becomes someone else's freedom tomorrow? Listen to me carefully, chosen one. The reason that calling feels so heavy is because it's not just yours. You're not just carrying your own dreams. You're carrying the unfulfilled destinies of everyone who came before you and the unlimited potential of everyone who comes after you. That's why the enemy fights you so hard. That's why he sends doubt at 3 a.m. That's why he whispers, "You're not qualified," every time you step forward. Because he knows what's at stake. He knows that if you break through, you're not just breaking through for yourself. You're breaking generational cycles. You're opening doors that will stay open for decades. David understood this weight. When he stood before Goliath, he wasn't just a shepherd boy with a slingshot. He was carrying the honor of God's people. 1 Samuel 17:45, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty." David knew that victory wasn't just about him. It was about what his victory would mean for generations. And, chosen one, your Goliath isn't just standing in front of you. Your Goliath is standing in front of your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren. And the stone you throw in faith today will echo through eternity. But here's the truth that will set you free from the weight of this burden. You don't carry it alone. Hebrews 12:1 says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and run with perseverance the race marked out for us." Every ancestor who prayed for breakthrough is cheering you on. Every saint who died believing for something better is in your corner. You're not fighting this battle by yourself. You've got backup from heaven and heritage from earth. The reason it felt heavy is because it was holy. This mantle you're carrying isn't punishment. It's promotion. It's not burden. It's blessing. It's not too much for you. It's just enough to change everything. And chosen one, I need you to understand something that will shift your perspective forever. What looks like weight to you looks like wings to heaven. What feels like pressure to you feels like purpose to the generations watching. Type in the comments right now, it didn't start with me, but it shifts with me. Because July 7th, 2025 isn't just another day in your life. It's the day you stop running from your inheritance and start running toward your impact. This is the day you realize that mantle wasn't meant to crush you. It was meant to crown you. But the question that will determine everything is this: will you carry what your ancestors couldn't carry so your descendants won't have to? Chosen one, let me tell you something that's going to shake every comfortable doctrine you've ever heard about following God. You think obedience is about being a good little soldier, sitting quietly in the pew, waiting for your turn to be blessed? You think surrender means becoming weak, passive, invisible? You've been lied to. Obedience is not submission. Obedience is sacred warfare. And on July 7th, 2025, heaven is looking for warriors, not worriers. God is recruiting fighters, not followers, because the next level doesn't respond to talent. It responds to total surrender. But here's where most people get it twisted. They think surrender means giving up. No, chosen one. Surrender means giving in to the most powerful force in the universe. When you obey God's voice with fire in your bones, you don't become weaker. You become weaponized. Look at Joshua. God didn't tell him to pray about Jericho. He told him to march 7 days, 7 times around, then shout. Joshua 6:16 says, "When the trumpet sounded, the army shouted, and at the sound of the trumpet, when the men gave a loud shout, the wall collapsed." That wasn't passive faith. That was explosive obedience. That was warfare wrapped in worship. But you know what your problem is? You've been asking God for breakthrough while keeping one foot on the brake. You've been praying for open doors while refusing to walk through the ones He's already cracked. You want the Red Sea to part, but you won't get your feet wet. What if I told you that heaven has been waiting not for your perfect timing, but for your immediate obedience? What if the breakthrough you've been begging for is being held up by the one move you refuse to make? David didn't ask Goliath for a meeting. He picked up 5 stones and ran toward the giant. That's warrior obedience. That's what July 7th is calling out of you. Not timid prayers, but thunderous action. You see, chosen one, the enemy has convinced you that obedience is boring, that following God's voice makes you ordinary. But look at Moses. When he obeyed the voice from the burning bush, he didn't become a follower, he became a liberator. Exodus 3:10, "So now go, I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people out of Egypt." One act of obedience turned a shepherd into a nation shaker. And you're worried about what people will think? You're concerned about your reputation, your comfort zone, your 5-year plan? Let me ask you something that's going to cut through every excuse you've manufactured. How many more years are you going to waste asking God to move while you sit still? How many more breakthrough messages are you going to watch while your assignment collects dust? How long are you going to let fear dress up as wisdom? Because here's what happens when you obey with fire. When you say yes to God with your whole chest, not just your Sunday morning voice. The spiritual realm shifts. Angels get deployment orders. Demons get eviction notices. Heaven starts rearranging circumstances that have been blocking you for years. But it doesn't happen until you move. It doesn't activate until you act. Esther could have stayed quiet, safe, comfortable. But when Mordecai told her, "Who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this," Esther 4:14, she didn't pray about it for 6 months. She said, "I will go to the king even though it is against the law, and if I perish, I perish." That's warrior obedience. That's what saves nations. Your obedience today doesn't just affect you. It affects generations you'll never meet. It breaks chains you didn't even know were there. It opens pathways for people who are praying right now for someone like you to say yes to God. In July 7th, this isn't just another day on your calendar. This is your Esther moment. This is your David and Goliath showdown. This is the day heaven has been preparing you for through every trial, every delay, every moment when you wanted to quit but didn't. The anointing on your life is not decorative, it's operational. It's not there to make you feel special, it's there to make you effective. But it only activates when you move in obedience, not when you move in comfort. So here's my question for you, chosen one, and this is going to determine everything that happens next in your life. When God whispers that instruction that makes no logical sense, that threatens your security, that asks you to step out of the boat, are you going to calculate the risk, or are you going to trust the voice? Because your yes today becomes tomorrow's open gate. Your obedience in this moment creates the momentum for your destiny. And if you're ready to stop playing it safe with your calling, if you're ready to weaponize your worship through warrior obedience, say, I obey with fire if your answer is yes. But understand this, once you say it, once you cross that line from comfortable to committed, there's no going back to small, there's no returning to ordinary. You're about to discover what happens when obedience stops being religious and starts being revolutionary. Chosen one, let me tell you something that's going to shake you to your core. That feeling you've carried your entire life, that sense of being different, set apart, watched, it's not in your head. You've been marked. And I don't mean marked like a target. I mean marked like a masterpiece. There's sacred ink flowing through your spiritual DNA right now. Heaven's fingerprint is embedded so deep in your soul that hell itself recognizes you from 3 blocks away. You think you've been walking through life unnoticed? Think again. Every step you take leaves a divine signature that the spiritual realm reads like headlines. This mark isn't something you earned, it's something you are. Before your mother knew your name, before your father held you, before you took your first breath, heaven had already tattooed eternity onto your spirit. Jeremiah 1:5 says it plain. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. Set apart. Not set aside, set apart. You know what that means? It means you cannot blend in, even when you try. It means people feel something when you walk into a room and they can't explain it. It means dogs stop barking, children stare. Strangers tell you their deepest secrets within 5 minutes of meeting you. What if the reason people treat you differently isn't because something's wrong with you, but because they feel your divine mark before you even speak? You see, this mark operates on frequencies the natural eye cannot detect, but demons, they see it clear as day. That's why they've been working overtime to convince you that you're ordinary, broken, forgotten, because marked souls don't stay hidden forever. And when you wake up to what you carry, the enemy's game is over. Think about Moses, 80 years old, hiding in the desert, convinced he was washed up. But that burning bush, it wasn't random. It found him because the mark on his life was still burning bright. The mark doesn't fade with age, chosen one. It doesn't diminish with mistakes. It doesn't disappear with disappointment. Your mark has been waiting for this exact moment, July 7th, 2025, when heaven would pull back the veil and let you see what's been there all along. You cannot walk like everybody else anymore, because your back now carries a scroll, and angels are reading it as you move. Every decision you make echoes in boardrooms you've never seen. Every prayer you whisper gets fast-tracked to the throne room. Every tear you cry becomes holy water that shifts atmospheres. This mark explains why you've survived what should have destroyed you. Why doors opened when you had no key. Why favor found you when you weren't even looking. You thought it was luck? You thought it was coincidence? No, beloved, it was the mark working on your behalf. David was just a shepherd boy when Samuel showed up with the anointing oil. But 1 Samuel 16:13 tells us that, from that day on, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David. The mark changed everything. People who once ignored him suddenly couldn't take their eyes off him. The giant that terrified an entire army looked like a practice dummy to a marked man. But here's what's about to blow your mind. The mark isn't just for your protection, it's for your purpose. You didn't just survive to tell the story, you survived to be the story. Your mark carries assignments that haven't been downloaded yet, revelations that haven't been revealed, miracles that haven't been manifested. Destiny doesn't just follow you, it hunts you, because heaven invested too much in your marking to let you waste it on small dreams and safe prayers. You cannot unsee this truth now. You cannot unknow what you know. The mark has been activated, and there's no going back to playing small, thinking little, or hiding in the shadows. If you feel it rising in your spirit right now, if you feel that divine seal burning in your chest, say it out loud. Mark, chosen, sent. You don't need a spotlight, beloved. You already carry the seal. But this marking comes with a warning that's about to change everything you thought you knew about your next chapter. Chosen one, before we part ways, let me remind you of what heaven declared over your life today. July 7th, 2025 was never meant to be ordinary, because you were never meant to be ordinary. That divine telegram with your name on it, it arrived exactly when it was supposed to. The mark on your spirit, it's been there all along, waiting for this moment of recognition. You are not behind schedule. You are not forgotten. You are not disqualified by your past or diminished by your pain. You are marked, chosen, and sent with purpose that echoes through eternity. And here's what I need you to understand with every fiber of your being. You are not walking this path alone. The same God who whispered your name before you were born is walking beside you right now. He sees every tear, knows every struggle, and he's orchestrating victory, even in what looks like delay. There's a community of chosen ones watching this message right now, feeling the same stirring in their spirit that you feel. We're not scattered by accident, we're connected by assignment. When one of us rises, we all rise. When one of us breaks through, we all break through. Let me ask you this. Now that you know who you really are, now that the mark has been revealed, now that July 7th has delivered its divine message, what are you going to do with this truth? How will you walk differently? How will you speak differently? How will you love differently? Before you leave this sacred moment, I want to pray over you. Close your eyes. Let these words settle deep into your spirit. Father, in the mighty name of Jesus, I speak over every person hearing this message right now. Lord, you see them, you know their struggle, you know their pain, you know how long they've been waiting, how hard they've been fighting, how deeply they've been believing, even when the evidence wasn't there. Today, on July 7th, 2025, I declare that the season of delay is over. The season of doubt is finished. The season of discouragement is done. Release your favor over their lives like a flood. Open doors that no man can shut. Heal what's been broken. Restore what's been stolen. Multiply what they've sown in secret. Lord, let them feel your presence right now. Let them know beyond any shadow of doubt that they are loved, they are chosen, they are equipped, and they are not alone. Send divine connections their way. Send provision from unexpected places. Send peace that passes all understanding. Break every chain of fear, every limitation of the past, every whisper of the enemy that says they're not enough. Silence the voices of doubt and amplify the voice of destiny. Let them walk in the authority of who you've called them to be. Cover them with your protection. Guide their steps. illuminate their path, and let this day, July 7th, 2025, be remembered as the day everything changed. In Jesus' mighty name. Amen, beloved. Don't keep this message to yourself. There's someone in your life who needs to hear what you just heard. Share this video, tag someone who's been struggling, comment below and let us know how this message touched your heart. Write, "I receive it," if you felt God speaking directly to you. Tell us your story, share your breakthrough, celebrate your victory. We're a family here, and families pray for each other, encourage each other, and lift each other up. You're not just watching a video, you're part of a movement of chosen ones who are waking up to their divine identity. If this message blessed you, if it confirmed what God was already whispering to your spirit, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Don't miss what God is releasing through this channel. Your breakthrough might be in the next message. Thank you for staying until the very end. Thank you for opening your heart. Thank you for believing that God still speaks, still moves, and still performs miracles. Now go forward, chosen one. Walk in the authority of who you are. The mark is upon you, the seal is unbroken, and your time is now. The divine telegram has been delivered, your destiny is activated, and heaven is watching with expectation to see what you do next. Go in peace, go in power, go in purpose. You are marked, you are chosen, you are sent. Break every chain of fear, every limitation of the past, every whisper of the enemy that says they're not enough. Silence the voices of doubt and amplify the voice of destiny. Let them walk in the authority of who you've called them to be. Cover them with your protection. Guide their steps. Illuminate their path. And let this day, July 7th, 2025, be remembered as the day everything changed. In Jesus' mighty name. Amen, beloved. Don't keep this message to yourself. There's someone in your life who needs to hear what you just heard. Share this video, tag someone who's been struggling, comment below and let us know how this message touched your heart. Write, "I receive it," if you felt God speaking directly to you. Tell us your story, share your breakthrough, celebrate your victory. We're a family here, and families pray for each other, encourage each other, and lift each other up. You're not just watching a video, you're part of a movement of chosen ones who are waking up to their divine identity. If this message blessed you, if it confirmed what God was already whispering to your spirit, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Don't miss what God is releasing through this channel. Your breakthrough might be in the next message. Thank you for staying until the very end. Thank you for opening your heart. Thank you for believing that God still speaks, still moves, and still performs miracles. Now go forward, chosen one. Walk in the authority of who you are. The mark is upon you, the seal is unbroken, and your time is now. The divine telegram has been delivered, your destiny is activated, and heaven is watching with expectation to see what you do next. Go in peace, go in power, go in purpose. You are marked, you are chosen, you are sent.